Moving into my dream lake house was meant to be the peaceful beginning of a brand new chapter in my life. I had spent years working toward this moment, saving, planning, and imagining what it would feel like to finally live somewhere beautiful and quiet. The property itself was everything I had hoped for, a stunning house right by the water, with a view so calming it could make you forget every stress you'd ever had. Standing there that morning, watching the sunlight reflect across the lake, I thought this place was going to change my life for the better. Unfortunately, that peaceful dream lasted all of about 10 minutes. My first day quickly turned into a complete disaster, and the reason was the local homeowners association. It all started the moment the moving trucks arrived and pulled into my driveway. I was standing outside directing the movers, carefully making sure my most prized possession, a vintage arcade cabinet I had restored myself, was handled gently. I was mid-sentence explaining where it should go when suddenly I heard the screech of tires. A golf cart came flying down the street and stopped abruptly right in the middle of my brand-new driveway. Out stepped a woman holding a clipboard. Her haircut looked so perfectly stiff and symmetrical you could practically set your watch by it. She marched straight toward me with the confidence of someone who believed she ran the entire neighborhood. "Let's call her Karen." "Excuse me," she said sharply, her voice dripping with condescension. "You cannot park these commercial vehicles here. This is a violation of HOA bylaws. Section C, paragraph 4. For a moment, I thought she must be joking. I tried to explain calmly. They're only here for the day. You know, because I'm moving in. But Karen clearly wasn't interested in hearing explanations. She tapped her clipboard impatiently, like a judge about to issue a sentence. "The rules are the rules," she said. "You have 30 minutes to move those trucks, or I will have them towed." I just stood there in disbelief. I hadn't even unpacked a single box yet, and somehow I was already being threatened with violations on my very first day. Try to keep things friendly. I held out my hand. "Look, I'm your new neighbor. My name's Alex. We're just unloading our furniture. We'll be out of everyone's way as soon as we're finished." Karen didn't even glance at my hand. Instead, she stared at me with the kind of expression usually reserved for someone who had just tracked mud onto a freshly cleaned carpet. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England," she snapped. "The trucks need to move." Then, as if that wasn't enough, she began inspecting my property like a detective searching for evidence. She pointed her pen toward my front door. "That welcome mat," she said, frowning. "That color is not an approved earth tone." I blinked. My welcome mat. Apparently, that was now a problem too. Sighing, I turned back toward the movers and quietly told them to speed things up. The last thing I wanted was a full-blown argument with the HOA on day one. But Karen clearly had no intention of leaving. She planted herself at the edge of the driveway with her arms crossed and began timing us like some kind of referee. Every few minutes, she called out another supposed violation. "Your grass is 1/4 of an inch too long. And that garden gnome is not an approved lawn ornament." At that point, I was honestly expecting her to pull out a measuring tape and start checking the distance between my recycling bins. The movers were getting nervous. I was getting irritated. And this one woman was single-handedly turning what should have been a happy, exciting day into a stressful mess. So I made the decision to ignore her. That turned out to be a huge mistake. A few minutes later, she suddenly pulled out her phone and held it up dramatically. "I am calling the authorities," she announced loudly. "You are creating a public nuisance and deliberately ignoring community regulations." I thought she was bluffing. She wasn't. She actually called 911 on me for moving into my own house. About 10 minutes later, 2 police cars slowly rolled up the street. Their sirens were quiet, but their lights flashed as they approached the driveway. Karen stood there looking extremely proud of herself, like she had just won some sort of neighborhood championship. The officers stepped out of the cars looking far more tired than concerned. One of them, Officer Miller, walked over to me. "Sir," he said calmly, "we received a call about a disturbance. Something about illegally parked vehicles." I explained the situation as simply as I could, telling him I had just bought the property and that the trucks were there to unload my furniture. Before I could even finish, Karen jumped in. She started waving her clipboard like it was a weapon. "He's violating multiple codes, officer," she insisted. He's shown complete disregard for our community regulations. Officer Miller listened patiently, then glanced over at his partner. Run the plates on the moving trucks, he said casually, just to be thorough. Then he turned back to me. And, sir, could I see your ID and proof that you own this property? Of course, I said. I handed him my driver's license along with the official property deed. While he was looking over the documents, his partner walked back from the patrol car with a strange expression on his face. He leaned over and whispered something quietly to Officer Miller. Officer Miller's eyebrows lifted slightly. He looked down at the paperwork again, then back at me, and finally over at Karen, who was standing there practically vibrating with self-righteous satisfaction. Ma'am, Officer Miller said slowly, his tone suddenly very different. Do you know who you've been harassing? Karen straightened proudly. A rule breaker, she said confidently. The officer tried and failed to hide a small smile. No, ma'am, he replied. You've been harassing the owner of this property and the one next to it. Karen frowned. And the one next to that, he continued. Then he paused for a moment before delivering the final part. In fact, according to these records, he owns the entire block, all 12 properties on this street. He pointed casually down the road, including the one you're currently renting. The silence that followed was absolutely priceless. Karen's face turned several shades of red in the span of about 3 seconds. Her jaw dropped. So far it looked like it might actually hit the very welcome mat she had just criticized. For once, she had nothing to say. She simply stood there frozen, her clipboard hanging loosely at her side. I looked at her and gave a small, polite smile. So, I said calmly, about those moving trucks. I gestured toward the driveway. I think they're going to stay exactly where they are until we finish unloading. Then I nodded toward the garden gnome, sitting near the porch. And that gnome, he's family. The gnome stays too. The officers tipped their hats, wished me a pleasant day, and headed back to their patrol cars. Karen quickly shuffled back to her golf cart without saying another word, started up, and drove away faster than she had arrived. And interestingly enough, I haven't received a single HOA violation notice since that day. Sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is simply to remind them that you own the playground. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.